Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole are two of the most important rappers of the last generation. And when you talk about dream albums, the Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole collab was basically the hypothetical holy grail of the new gen. However, as the years went by, fans never got to see that album or even a mixtape from the two. But it is in understanding the history that this duo of rappers have and the history that both of them made that you understand why this is the greatest rap album that we never got.
Two young stars was born and y'all go die here. Oh Lord, gotta be the yam.
The year is 2009. And with the release of The Blueprint 3, a rapper by the name of J. Cole would make his name be heard on the main stage. This rapper is someone who was making waves on the internet through mixtapes, but with Jay-Z's stamp of approval, there was no telling what J. Cole's future had in store. Clearly, J. Cole had a future in hip-hop. On the other side of the country, a rapper by the name of K-Dot is deciding to change his name from K-Dot to Kendrick Lamar and begin the story of what would ultimately become one of the most legendary careers in hip-hop history. But for now, Kendrick Lamar was a relative unknown. A few months later, on March 2010, a rap group by the name You and I would release an album called A Love Supreme 2.0. And in the process of celebrating this album release, Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole would meet for the very first time.
When he met me first, it was like the XXL freshman cover shoot, and I was coming in late because our flight got canceled, and we just barely made it, and he introduced himself to me, which I vaguely remember now when he tells me. But my first recollection was there's a group who's now disbanded called You and I from LA, and who I was real cool with, still am cool with. So they had an album release party in LA at this little lounge, maybe 200 people. We go to the lounge, you know, they celebrating, they just put out an EP or an album or whatever it is, and you know, they rocking the mic, and they call up this kid. They like, yeah, this is our man, blah, 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 from Compton, Kendrick Lamar. I didn't even hear the name. I just looked and somebody started rapping. As soon as he started rapping, I'm like, what the fuck?
And with J. Cole respecting the skills that Kendrick Lamar showed on that night, and Kendrick Lamar already being a J. Cole fan, the two got along very well. Well enough to where the two began working on a couple of songs. And by the end of the year, Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole were discussing the possibility of a collaborative record.
Shit, we just got up and locked in the studio for a day and came out with a few bangers, and it was so motherfucking crazy. We felt like we should continue making these motherfucking records and see what it turned into at the end of the day, you know what I mean? Who knows?
And another one I got is this song we got now called Temptations.
Yeah, often I'm caught up in confusion and need a dissolution, and tell me the solution.
Notably though, the careers of J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar would change drastically in 2011.
Hey, we got a good thing. Don't know if I'ma see you again.
Firstly, J. Cole released Cole World, The Sideline Story. The record was J. Cole's debut studio album, and it showed the world that not only was J. Cole a lyrical rapper, but he could also be a commercial one too. The success of the record made it clear that J. Cole was here to stay, something that was also clear for those who managed to hear Section 80. Section 80 was also the debut studio album of Kendrick Lamar. Of course, it is important to note that by the time of this project's release, more people knew the name Kendrick Lamar. Mostly in part of a shout out from the legendary Dr. Dre, who was really big on this Kendrick Lamar guy.
Yo, you gotta sign this kid from Compton, boom, boom, Kendrick, boom, boom. And then Manny was like, oh yeah, that's the kid I was telling you about, boom, boom. So I have no clue, you know what I mean? Cause that's never, you know what I mean? I've never heard anybody say that type of shit, but yeah, shout out to Dr. Dre. He made the right decision.
Did you want to sign?
I would appreciate if you guys could subscribe to the channel. It just takes like a second to subscribe. I make hip hop videos like all the time, and I would just appreciate it. And it's safe to say that Kendrick Lamar was generating buzz amongst hip hop fans. And with J. Cole grabbing the streets commercially and Kendrick Lamar securing the real fans, that collaboration tape seemed like a much bigger deal than even the year prior. And it was actually on Section 80 that fans would get their first taste of a collaborative track between J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar.
Just call this shit high power.
Of course, the track doesn't feature J. Cole, but it is produced by none other than J. Cole himself. But if you wanted to listen to a track with J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar rapping, then you should have shown up to some of the events Kendrick Lamar was holding in preparation for Section 80. because it was there where Kendrick Lamar would preview some of the songs that he had with J. Cole.
Left side, right side, right side.
Notably, a song by the name of Temptation and a song by the name of Shock the World.
Kendrick, while I stare inside the solar system, hoping I soak up enough game and play 3 systems with 1 controller.
Though throughout 2011 there was no official feature or collaborative song between Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole, the two would continue to tease a collaborative record. Cole promised a project that would tear up the world, while on the other side, Kendrick Lamar was confident in saying that the record was 90% completed in terms of production. However, as 2011 became 2012, there was still no release date in sight. Not to worry though, because the two remain adamant that the project was still coming, with Cole announcing that not only were the two working on a project, but that this project wasn't gonna be a mixtape, it was gonna be an album.
That mixtape that y'all,
Oh man,
it's like folklore. It's hip hop folklore.
man. Album, man.
The Kendrick J. Cole mixtape album.
Tape.
So y'all are officially working on that.
Yeah, we working on it.
Okay.
However, the only taste of music that the fans got from these two was another producer-rapper song with the Jig Is Up. But here's the deal. Though Kendrick Lamar might have been a known name in 2012 hip-hop, his stardom exploded with the release of Good Kid, Mad City. To talk about this album almost seems redundant, as the record is one of the most iconic pieces of music in the last 15 years. However, it notably does not feature J. Cole, not even on production. Crazy enough, it features Drake, but I guess J. Cole didn't make the cut, or the duo was really saving all of their songs for this collaborative project. According to Cole though, a big reason for why the project hadn't been completed yet was because of the competitiveness that the two carried. A competitiveness that would only intensify after the release of Control.
Who's the best MC? Kendrick, Jigga, and Nas.
So yada yada, Kendrick Lamar calls out everyone, Control, you know the story. But it is worth mentioning that J. Cole did respond.
Was home alone. Next thing I know, that long ass verse from a song called Control was on.
And though it wasn't anything bad per se, it was definitely a warning shot. It is worth mentioning that Kendrick Lamar said in an interview with Power 106 that after the TKO remix dropped and he heard J. Cole's response to Control, he called him up and J. Cole said he was in character.
Oh, family, brother, right?
My bro. We was at the Yeezy show last night, soaking up all the game, man.
Does Kendrick call J. Cole when the TKO remix comes out and you hear Cole's rap about how it felt to kind of hear Control?
Yeah, I definitely texted you.
Yeah. You know what I liked about that? That people were just, that it was kind of just like a fun time Cole was having.
Yeah, he was in character and he just did what he did best, played off words, man.
Beautiful.
Yep.
So I guess he didn't really mean it. It did show a little bit of the competitive that both of them carried at this point, but it isn't anything too deep. If anything, what I would say we should look at as a red flag towards why this album hasn't dropped is that the career path of J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar are about to go in two very different directions. Of course, in 2013, J. Cole would drop Born Sinner and he would feature Kendrick Lamar on one track, but if there's an album that definitely changed the career path of J. Cole, it was the one he would release a year later.
Cole.
Because with the release of 2014 Forest Hills Drive, J. Cole's career would never be the same again. Just like how Good Kid, Mad City is one of the most iconic albums of the 2010s, 2014 Forest Hills Drive is one of the most iconic albums, not only of the decade, but of all time. Songs like Wet Dreams, A Tale of Two Cities, No Role Models, Love Yours, and many others on this album have gone on to define what J. Cole is as an artist. And overall, I'd say that this album as a whole is the definitive J. Cole album, and the one that best explains what J. Cole's career looked like when he was in his peak. Mainly in the sense that it was the first of J. Cole projects to carry no features, none at all. Not on the hooks, not on the verses. From track 1 to track 12, all you heard was J. Cole, which is something that earned him a lot of respect because this is something that in modern day hip hop didn't happen almost at all, if ever. But it is indicative of their career paths heading in two different directions. For now though, in an interview, Kendrick Lamar says that it is all love for J. Cole and even Drake, which honestly, I don't know whether to believe or not, but who am I to say? 2014 also marks the year where Kendrick Lamar would openly say that a Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole album is on the way. However, we see another red flag in the sense that Kendrick Lamar says that the project has been put on pause because both of the rappers feel as though they have a lot to say individually, which would make sense. These aren't the same rappers that blew up in 2011 that were doing whatever. They were stars and they were witnessing things they had never witnessed before and encountering stories that they needed to tell. And the best example of why these rappers needed to go solo for a minute is 2015 and 2016, as both rappers would drop some of the most meaningful albums in their entire career with To Pimp a Butterfly and For Your Eyes Only. To many, To Pimp a Butterfly is the crowning moment of Kendrick Lamar's career and what then put him in legendary status. Unlike Cole, he did have features in his album, but unfortunately J. Cole wasn't one of them. The album was great, but in terms of J. Cole and Kendrick, it seemed as though the two hadn't made any progress. That is, until Black Friday of 2015.
Let's get the proceeding this evening.
This is to date the only technically real song where both J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar are rapping. And I only say technically because it's technically not a song, it's technically two. This is because Kendrick Lamar raps over J. Cole's A Tale of Two Cities, and J. Cole raps over Alright. It was definitely a moment in hip-hop and a moment that made it seem as though Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole were about to make the hottest album of 2016. I mean, that collaborative album seemed like a prophecy now. There was, however, For Your Eyes Only.
Your daddy was a real nigga cause he loved you for your eyes only.
An album that is very personal to J. Cole. It's a conceptual album about one of his friends that died, and the story is told at times from the perspective of Cole, at times from the perspective of his friend, to the daughter of his friend. And in many ways, this album is For Her Eyes Only. However, people didn't like it, they thought it was boring, and most of all, they were highly disappointed. Again, no Kendrick Lamar features or no features at all, and as 2016 turned into 2017, it seemed as though J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar were just never going to make an album. TDE label mate Ab-Soul, who is signed to the same label as Kendrick Lamar, confirmed that the record at the very least existed and that they had been working on it.
They just need to use my verse.
But there is a Kendrick Cole album.
There's a Kendrick, they got it. You know what I'm saying? They got something in the works. They've been working on that motherfucker for a while.
It had been more than half a decade, and most of the songs that the duo had together were less than notable. Songs that time forgot because they were on a DJ Khaled album or whatever. And the release of Damn only solidified that maybe J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar were never going to make this collaborative album. Kendrick now kept to himself in terms of doing interviews and stuff, and J. Cole kept to himself in terms of not doing features with people. A trend that would continue as 2017 turned into 2018 and J. Cole released KOD. Notably though, this album did carry one feature, which was J. Cole himself. He had an alter ego, I guess. By this point, it seemed as though J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar were never gonna make that album. But in 2019, the world would get one more J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar song.
I woke up for some money.
Well, technically, I guess. Under the Sun is one of the most notable songs from 2019 personally. It has a lot of good rap verses from J. Cole, even The Baby, and Kendrick Lamar is on the hook. And even though it probably was like an old song that Kendrick Lamar had recorded, it was nice to see Cole and Kendrick Lamar on the same track. And as 2019 turned into 2020, not only had the world changed, but hip-hop itself had changed. No longer were Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole the young dogs in the game. They were the game. And I mean, J. Cole was already starting to get the old head treatment since like 2018. And as 2020 concluded, neither J. Cole or Kendrick Lamar released an album. At this point, it had been 3 years since J. Cole released an album and 4 since Kendrick Lamar released his. Notably, however, J. Cole did return to hip-hop in the way of the offseason. A record where J. Cole finally put his pride aside and decided, hey, maybe I do need features. And for the first time in almost a decade, J. Cole released an album that had features in it. Unfortunately though, that did not mean that Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole had a song together in this album. In fact, Kendrick Lamar was like oddly quiet. People even began to theorize that Kendrick Lamar was retired, at least until the release of Family Ties. And it seemed like he was gonna be very, very aggressive on his next album. That record would release in 2022 and would not feature J. Cole. Instead, what you would get from Mr. Morale is a very personal story from Kendrick Lamar, where he reveals how he lost his love for the game, his battles with mental health, and most importantly, how he shows himself over hip-hop. And what that meant in terms of the J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar collaborative record was that Kendrick Lamar wasn't gonna do anything he didn't want to do. He didn't need to anymore. He had the money, he had the success, he had the respect that he wanted. And though it wasn't an outright confirmation that the record would never happen, J. Cole would take it upon himself to actually come out and say it on an interview.
Get into this huge infamous mystery Kendrick Cole tape. Was that ever real?
Oh yeah, for a second, because this was before his first album. This might have even been before mine type shit. I'm not sure. So at one point it was a real thing. But bro, time in life, we ain't never got a chance to like really go in and do it correctly. Cause that would take time, bro. For us to do something like that's full of our potential, that meets our real potential, bro, that you're gonna need time. Like
years maybe.
Yeah, maybe years, maybe at least a year.
And as 2023 concluded, it felt as though Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole were ready to retire. J. Cole had been teasing the fall off, and Kendrick Lamar kind of teased their retirement at the end of Mr. Morale. It seemed as though the collaborative record between J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar is just something that never came to be because of conflicting timelines in their career. However, maybe I'm wrong for thinking this, but I feel like from both rappers, there's been a, let's say, a competitive spirit that has sparked up between the two in the last few months. Mainly because of what Kendrick Lamar said on Like That. But with J. Cole's apology, who's to say that this beef isn't something that might spark up in common interest in a collaborative record? Realistically, I really don't think it's going to happen, but optimistically, I really wish it did. The reality is that as the big three starts to conclude their careers, or at the very least their prime, me and most hip-hop fans have begun to notice that what the big three were was something very special that will probably never be duplicated. And before I concluded this video, I just wanted to give them their flowers because they've definitely earned them. Every single one of them. Anyways, shout out to y'all, shout out to Jay Dilla, shout out to Cole, Kendrick, shout out to Drake even. Shout out to God, and shout out to God.